Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the stream. Thanks for hanging out with me today. And I don't really have a plan for today, but we haven't done a Q&A in a long time, so let's just do kind of a informal Q&A. I'm not setting up a special setup for lights and camera and stuff like I normally do, but I got pretty nice lights set up here already. All right. I made a bunch of custom emojis for YouTube chat for my channel members. They don't seem to be animated, and that's really frustrating me because I mean, I would have made really easy, quick emojis if I knew they weren't going to be animated. But let me know if you see any of the chat things actually animated. Maybe it's only on mobile. But I uploaded GIFs. They are GIFs in the membership panel, but when I go to the chat, they're not animated, and that's kind of annoying. I guess before we get started, I should talk about the sale that's on for the courses, reaperblog.net/courses, or you could go to mixingandreaper.com. Use the code STAYHOME. You can get any of the courses for $15. And that's half price. So if you are interested in learning about mixing with Reaper, seeing my process, seeing how I use my favorite plugins and stock plugins in Reaper over the course of a song, there's 3 different parts for Mixing in Reaper, Volume 1, 2, and 3. And very kind of popular courses, and people love them. So check them out. It's a great way to support the Reaper blog. Okay. All right, so we got some questions coming in. Stemage asks, you talked about your diffusers in the Facebook group. Can you talk generally about how you decided to set up your room regarding treatment? When I moved into this room, it was kind of like it's like the living room of this house. So it's, I want to say it's like 16 by 20 or something like that. And there's a large window on this side and one in front of my desk. And I used to be kind of set up in the middle. So I had like huge unused areas on the left and right of my desk. And and I don't know, 2 or 3 feet behind my desk of unused space. Now I've got it kind of divided in half. I've got this big IKEA shelf. So this wall here is actually just a big IKEA expedite shelf, I think it's called. And so I have these panels mounted on it. Typically for a small space, you do lots of acoustic treatment and like broadband panels and things like that to just absorb everything. But I don't like the sound of it with my voice or acoustic guitar or tambourines, shakers. It just kind of sucks all the life out of that. So these diffusers scatter the sound. They control it in a way that doesn't make it sound like lifeless. So besides these ones that you see here, I could move my camera, but I don't really want to. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I've got 6 panels in front of me and then a cloud above me, which is just these black covered acoustic panels, 2 inches of fiberglass inside. I've got more behind me, and then others on the other side of the room. Acoustic treatment is so important. It makes everything you record and listen to in the room sound much better. I like to have kind of like a dead front end of the room and then lively back into the room. Philip Jackson asked, would love some tips about how to automate session setup, automatically adding files to blank session and track presets on them. Is this something that can be done with Mac Automator? I don't know about like loading presets like based on name or anything like that. Project templates, probably the way to go with this. I've shown my setup a lot of times, but I'll just show you something quickly here. So if I've got my empty project, I right click, insert track from template, I've got a basic track folders set up. They're automatically named and colored. They're colored by the auto color settings in SWS auto color. I think I've got them matching. I could be wrong. And then if I grab some audio files from a Reaper project, I don't know. Here's a mix. If I grab all these files, drop them in on separate tracks, I'm just pretty much selecting them. Let's say these are all vocals here, so I'll select all of these vocal tracks. There's a lot in this one. So these are all vocal tracks. I'll just, I'll either cut them or just drag them into the folder like that. For kick and snare and stuff like that, I don't know. I pretty much just like remove them, find my drum folder, paste, and then drag them up to fill the folder. Something like that. It doesn't take too long to set up the project like that. But yeah, you could do the same thing. I don't have effects in my template. I like to start from scratch and listen to everything flat and then decide. But I do have some like saved effects chains for like bass and drums and things like that I can load in and compare. But yeah, pretty much I start flat. For me, this is the most simple and kind of efficient way of setting up a project. I've tried pretty much everything else, like making a template with everything kind of pre-processed, and then you still end up having to do a lot of manual moving around and renaming things. So that's what works for me. Is there a way for frequency ducking in Reaper instead of track spacer? Track spacer is similar to a side-chained multiband compressor or dynamic EQ. I would say it's closer to a dynamic EQ. With the stock plugins, not really an easy way to do that. I haven't used track spacer myself. I'm almost afraid because then I'll have to buy it. Yeah, I would use like TDR Nova and then sidechain input to that. And, just pick like 2 or 3 frequencies that you want to duck from the sidechain and just do that. I don't think you need like, exact frequency matching or anything like that. 2 or 3 bands, even 1 band is usually enough. Andrea asks, what do you think of Studio One as an artist, which would cost $49 only if you upgrade from previous version? Yeah, it's a fine DAW. I haven't used it since the very first version, and I was put off by having multiple tiers. Like the lowest tier doesn't let you use VST's plugins, and I think that's kind of ridiculous. But as far as like workflow and stuff, it seemed fine. I didn't hate it immediately. And so that's kind of a big step up from a lot of other DAWs like Logic, Cubase, Sonar. They just confuse me and are annoying. But Studio One seemed okay. My friend Joe Gilder makes a lot of really good tutorial videos on that. I'm sorry if I'm looking down here and not at the camera. The chat's far away from the camera. It takes me a long time to get used to that. Oh, for a podcast. Okay, so yeah, I went off on a tangent about music mixing, but if it's for a podcast, I have a template set up. Do I actually have that here? I do. I can show you what a mastering show podcast looks like. Man, that's annoying. Well, I guess I'm live again, but new chat window. Sad. That is so frustrating. I thought you could quit and resume. I didn't want to end the stream. I wanted to restart OBS. Yeah, I lost all the other questions. I forgot what I was talking about. I loaded a project that was at 44.1 and yeah, killed the stream. Okay, so whoever asked the question, I think it was Philip, when he gets back. Philip, if you're there, leave a comment and I'll try to continue with this. Okay, track spacer, I'm pretty sure was a different question. This is what my podcast edit looks like. I'm not on this episode, but this is for the mastering show. The template is basically one folder, 2 dialogue tracks, and the theme. I've got some preset automation on the theme. The tracks have effects chains like this. Pretty standard stuff. I drop the files in anywhere past this hello marker, and I just sync them up. So Ian says hello to our guest or to me, and I find the response and I line them up, and I check later on in the project to see if they're still in sync, and that's it. And I'm always going to be adjusting for timing and things like that. For a podcast, that's essentially the template. Like, figure out your dialogue effects chain, save that on the track. There's processing on the dialogue track, which is some de-essing with Nova, some multiband compression, brick wall limiter. The master track just has metering plugins for the loudness graph. Any other questions? There was a question, what do you think of the remixed competition? I liked it. I don't think I did an amazing mix. I think there were 3 or 4, maybe 5 mixes that were very good, but nothing perfect. There's some that were close to very good. And then after that, there were some that were very far off of the solid mix, and some others that just had kind of major problems. De-esser seems to only pick up high gains anyway for low gains. A de-esser is essentially a compressor that only responds to high bands. It depends on if it's a split split de-esser or not. So the Tone Boosters de-esser is a split de-esser where it only listens to the high frequencies by setting the filter high pass frequency, and then it compresses just the high frequencies. So kind of like a multiband compressor if you had recomp in here. And you make this respond to high frequencies by setting the threshold appropriately. That's essentially a de-esser. If you just set bands 1 and 2 off and set band 3 to only respond to the high frequencies, then it's essentially a de-esser. A dedicated de-esser just gives you a better layout of controls. The RxDS. Yeah, this one again is just like a high frequency only one. There are some other ones that are not split. So if you set up a recomp as a de-esser, you can make it detect only the high frequencies, but it will compress the entire signal. I'd be tempted to process my voice so I sound like Mr. Laserbeam voiceover man instead of a Brummy. Well, I just like to keep it natural. If you check a recent video on like a dialogue effects chain with Reaper plugins, then you'll see kind of my approach. It's still, I'll process it and it still sounds like the person, but we're removing things like sibilants and clicks and kind of evening out the presence of the voice. People tend to go too far with compression and processing, but it's usually just they're either using the wrong mic for their voice. They haven't found a good mic for themselves. Or they're just not comfortable with their voice. So, question, if time allows for it, what are your practices on decreasing the electrical sounds and buzzes coming through recording mics or guitars? That's a tricky one. Like, there's a lot of possibilities for that stuff. If there's an issue with the guitar, it's going to pick up more noise. If I record anything with my overhead lights or like the garage lights are on in my house, I'll get more buzz. Being too close to the computer, the angle that you're facing can all make a difference. I'm using power conditioners and what else? My pedal board is like a high-end power conditioned power supply thing, and I still get noise. Most of my mics don't get noise, but guitars definitely, because my main guitar is a Telecaster and it has a single coil. Yeah, just try your best to get rid of it. And then after recording, there's gating. There's I'll run Isotope RX on it. You pretty much only need to run it on the areas where you need it. You know what I mean? Like, while there's distortion happening in the recording, you don't, like, if it's going through an amp, you probably don't need to run a noise suppressor on it. But if it's a long fade out, then you might need to. I had a video where I used a automated low pass filter to remove noise, and that seemed to work pretty well. But a video of how film post and game sound designer people suffer without a proper surround panner. I have a strong feeling the developers will listen to you. Yeah, it seems like we were making progress on that for a while, but now it's been like another year and a half. I don't know. I can't relate to it really because I don't even have a surround setup, and I have no interest in working in surround. But I know, yeah, you guys suffer with it. I mean, you have those plugins that work, so it's not really that urgent. Info about Reaper updates and new Mac processors. I've heard that it will probably work okay. There is an ARM version of Reaper already. Like, you can run Reaper on a Raspberry Pi and on Linux and stuff. So, and it seems like Apple's tools for with Rosetta 2 and everything, it seems like it's probably going to work pretty well. Are you aware of a way to copy all effects parameters in a plugin from one place to another in the session in a quick way? Suppose you mean automated? Okay, let me show you this. If I had ReQ automated, I would right-click, copy selected effects including automation, and then I could go to another effects chain and paste it in here. And that would bring over all the automation lanes. If I had a section where it was automated, so like if I had some automation in this section that I wanted to bring over to here, for static points, I could do that. So if it was a flat automation lane or like a single point, I could do it pretty easily with multiple parameters. But otherwise, you probably have to put an automation item on each lane. I don't know. There's some changes coming to automation and selections and stuff, but it's not out yet. And I'm so out of it after having to deal with that technical difficulties. I almost didn't want to come back. So frustrating. Is there a way to freeze an item just with the same length of the original one? Shouldn't it, by default? If there's anything else on the track, it will go for longer. I don't know. I don't know what you mean by that. Do you know of a way to trigger different MIDI notes depending on the velocity a note is being pressed? Trigger different notes. If there is something, that would be in the effects browser under JS. No, I don't think there is. I think it's possible to do that, to convert velocity into pitch, but I don't know how. Someone asked how my PC is doing. I've had a couple days of issues, but overall it's pretty good. Like last week, I couldn't get it to boot, or I could get it into Windows and would just restart. And then I just unplugged everything and plugged it back in and it worked. And that was the second time something like that happened. So I'm almost afraid to turn it off at night now. I mean, other than that, it's been running really well. I just added a second NVMe drive to it through an adapter thing. Music Lover says Reaper is awesome, but one big drawback, no sampler like Ableton. Just lots of third-party and inexpensive and free samplers. I mean, choose your favorite. Ask Ableton to make a VST version of it. That seems like a fair demand rather than Reaper trying to replace all the software of every other DAW with 2 developers. Kind of ask the bigger companies to be more free with their software. Okay, BJ says, feels like developers don't take the surround workflow seriously. I think it's hard for them to relate because they're developers, not like film mixers. They're both musicians and coders primarily, demanding that they have all this experience with every field of audio. It's like, you know, they can only focus on one thing, really. Can it change sample's position like contact? So I wanted to trigger notes depending on the velocity. Okay. Yeah, I could set that up pretty easily in Contact, I think, if you have like all of your samples. I mean, even in Resamplematic. All right, I'm going to try closing this project. Hopefully it won't crash here. With Resamplematic, you can play different samples based on velocity by adding them to the list. Yeah, if you want a different bank of samples per pitch, then you'd use multiple instances of this, and you use I can't remember which one it is. Oh, you set it to a specific note, and you set it to note semitone shifted. But if you do one of these, I can't remember. I'm pretty sure you can set it up like that, but it's not going to be as easy as Contact. Maybe you're thinking of like how Junkie XL does his toms, where he's got different velocities on different keys. But it's really just, I think it's just a matter of mapping them the way you want, because he's not using a traditional sampler like with different velocity layers, and then he plays different pitches. I don't know. Maybe I'm just confused about this. I might have it backwards. Not an expert on that stuff. All right, so when you freeze a channel in Reaper, the length of the item inside the channel is based on the largest item inside the project, not the length of the actual item inside the freezed channel. Okay. Maybe? I don't know. Let's take this. I'll make it this big, and I'll freeze this track. Freeze it to mono. I don't know. Like, what you see here is this item is only as long as it was. Are you using like a sub project or something. Because for me, freezing just does the length of the item. Maybe if there's like, I think even with effects and things like that. So I put in a reverb, I'll put in shimmer, lots of feedback, lots of size, and I'll render that to stereo. It's still the same length as it was before. So if you mean sub-project, move new tracks to sub-project. Hopefully this doesn't kill the stream. Okay, so there it's added in a gap at the beginning, but the length is automatically going to be you know, the length of the project. You've got the end marker here in the sub-project. So I don't know what freeze function you're using, if it's not those two. Fastest way to toggle VSTs online, offline. You could use a toolbar button. I've got this docked toolbar on the side. I've got things like copy and paste effects chains. So you could probably put in the online, offline thing, but the shortcut is Shift Control on Windows to bypass or to set offline. There might be a function in here to set offline with a shortcut. Probably have to watch my video on that because I don't remember it. Toggle offline, Control Alt B. Yeah. In MIDI view, if I drag a MIDI note, it makes the item bigger. I want the item length locked in the MIDI view. Can't find an answer. Want the length locked. Yeah, there's so many options for the MIDI editor. It's kind of hard to say what the best options for each person is. So if I put in a MIDI item like that, I like the ability to resize it. Like, I need that. But that's not the default. And because there's so many options with this, I don't even know what it is that makes that, makes it work like that. I think it's this one. If you have loop source for new MIDI items enabled, yeah, so it's put in a loop point where I first stopped it. So it would start looping from there. And that's the only way that I know that you can kind of prevent the resizing. I don't like that. I hate it. Inside the editor, yeah, I mean, it's the same thing. So if you drag it from here, it's the same as dragging the outside. So I guess I don't really know what you're asking. What do you expect? What do you expect to happen instead? Do you have this turned off? Allow MIDI note to extend. Allow MIDI note edit to extend the media item. I have that turned off. So if I turn that on and I put in a, let's say, put in a whole note here, that extends the item. Maybe you want that off. Is it like that? Because, yeah, I could see that being bad. Options, turn off allow MIDI note edit to extend the media item. So bring this back to here. I drag in a note and it stops it there. Maybe that's what it was. What's the best way to normalize to a specific dB, such as -3 dB? So this one, normalize selected takes to dB value. So I'll get an, oops. Still not used to this keyboard after all this time. So I've got this one, normalize to a specific value, so -3, and that only raised it by 0.28. Do it at -6, does that. The other way is to just do the normalize. So double click that. All right, so it's back to normal. If I hit normalize on this in MIDI item properties, it's at plus 3.8. And then if I want to bring it down, I know that, sorry, to say that again, if I want it to normalize, it's going to be at 0 now. And if I want it at exactly 3, I just need to apply exactly -3 gain on the MIDI item, which is right there. So 2 ways to do it. How do you recommend repeated hearing or mixing with intuition? I find myself micromanaging, which finally leads to fatigue. Yeah, mixing fast and mixing fast makes a big difference. You don't get the chance to like second guess yourself, kind of. You can always kind of follow your intuition with that. Sorry for bumping the mic. Working fast, not listening too loud, working at a consistent level, checking references, taking breaks every hour, things like that, power naps. Oh, here's a good question. Is there a way to remove duplicate VST2 plugins from the plugin list if you only want to see the VST3 versions only? Yes, this is a new function. I'm going to get my effects window. Hopefully you can see this clearly, but probably not because I'm streaming at the wrong resolution. Options. Let's see, where is it? Okay, show an effects list. And duplicate plugins of different types, show only VST3 if present. Should we be limiting to -1 dB true peak? TDR limited comes up at 0.1, so I've been using that. Yeah, I do -1. I don't really care if it's true peak or not, but I give myself 1 dB because almost everywhere it's going to be played back in a streaming, like a compressed format. So, but even with CD, it's 1 dB. And you should, the last 0.9 dB isn't going to make or break anything. How to play Launchpad for beginners. I don't have a Launchpad. No intention of buying a Launchpad. There's a million videos about Launchpad. Reaper Launchpad for beginners. Yeah, well, I'm sure that's been done too. Quick sponsor post. This video is sponsored by the Reaper blog. Use the code STAYHOME. You'll get any of these courses for $15. So this is the best way to support the Reaper blog. Get yourself a nice, juicy 1 to 5 hour long course on mixing or on video production in Reaper. Really helps out the channel. And yeah, it's a great time to get back into learning as school begins again. That's code STAYHOME. Wondering if there's a way to get Retune to work live. You can only get it to work on pre-recorded vocal lines. It should work, but there's probably going to be a lot of latency on a live input. Yeah, there's 9,000 samples of latency, unfortunately. How do I tell Reaper to start at the beginning, very beginning of a project every time I load a project? Every time you load the project. The cursor position is saved with the project. So if you want to go to the beginning, you could use the SWS startup action. So I feel like I just talked about this in a video. Oh, it was for the video tools course. Startup. SWS extension has startup actions, which you can set for every project load or for a specific project. So set global startup action. When you run this, it will replace the existing startup action if you have one already, and then it will ask you to paste in a command ID. So what is it? Home, I think it is. There it is. Transport go to start of project. So copy that, copy selected command ID. Then you go to startup in the filter, set global startup action, and you paste that in. First, my startup action, I'm using loading screenset 1, which looks like this. I talked about screensets before, but yeah. So when I load a project, it always loads screenset 1, and that gets me ready to start. I think going back to the beginning is probably a good idea too. Let me just update that. I'm gonna make a new custom action. Call this project startup. Load Windows set 1 to start. There we go. Thank you, whoever asked that. Pete, thanks for that idea. I think that's a pretty smart idea to do that. What's the way to get used to Reaper? Just continue making simple projects and read the manual when needed. Yeah, doing actual work, getting paid to do work, really speeds up the process. I also do one-on-one lessons if you want to kind of knock off a whole bunch of things on your to-do list in an hour. Yeah, for me, it was just using it for everything, whether it's like, podcast recording, vocal recording, like I've done voiceover, I've done video editing, just use it for everything. And if you get stuck on anything, either write it down, or there's lots of little helper things inside of Reaper, like the action list, which is the question mark key on your keyboard. Inside here, there's basically every function in Reaper is listed in here, whether it's for the main or the MIDI editor. So anything that you want to do with the keyboard or the mouse wheel is in here. You can also attach any of these actions to a MIDI controller, toolbar, button, or remote control, so you can control it from your phone if you wanted. And then things with like mouse dragging and stuff like that, that's in mouse modifiers. So if there's anything that you're curious about changing to make it more suited to you, it's usually in these two windows. Is there a way to revert an item back to its original recording status before edits after doing many edits to the item? I think there is. I haven't done it in a while. SWS reset item length and media offset is one thing that sounds promising. Oh, I keep doing that. This button. Let's take this. So if I if I trim that and run this, that puts it back. Okay, so if it's something that you recorded in the project, there's preferred source position. Move item to source position. It only works with BWF files though, so that's not going to work. So let's see if these are BWF files. Put that in there, and then move to source position, and then put that at the start. So you can combine those two actions. That puts it there, and then the other one, which was reset item length and media offset, puts it there. But I think probably, yeah, reset the length first and then move to source position. Chris Norris says, I think I just delete it and re-import it from the saved location. Yeah, I mean, that's a good way to do it as well. Go to the project folder and import it again. But the options are there in Reaper. That reminds me, you could probably do it from the project media effects bay. So if it's like this and it's over here, could probably go to the source page, grab this, and then drop that in. Yeah, that would work. Yeah, Pete, if you want to go to my channel page here, or actually go to this page, reaperblog.net/contact-form, just the contact button at the top of the page. You can email me here. That's the easiest way to contact me. What CMS am I using for my website? It's WordPress based. Does anyone have a problem with switching from a docked MIDI editor window to the transport taking up the same size of the screen as the MIDI window to manually resize it? I can't say that I have. You might want to try moving the transport up to the top of the window. It's not attached to the dock anymore. That's the only way I can think of to manage that, unless you're using a screen set to just reset all your windows. So if you see this now, if I've got a bunch of windows open, let's put up the grouping matrix and, I don't know, the big clock. If I got all these, I'm just going to press 1 on my keyboard and it resets my view to how I like it. Just closes all those windows for me. How do you stop the crackling and popping noises on playback? Having a good computer, having a good audio interface, that's going to take care of most of the issues. Other than that, it's the media buffer size, or not media buffer size, audio device buffer size, making sure that this isn't too low for your computer to handle, and making sure that there aren't plugins on the master track that would delay everything and take up a lot of CPU unnecessarily. All right, I don't really want to answer like computer trouble questions too much in this this video, but I will address one thing. So if your issues are mostly with low latency, you might want to go to the buffering page, and you can turn off allow live effects multiprocessing. You can try that, which would, yeah, it might be better at low latencies. I have mine set like this. When scrolling up and down on mixer faders, is there a way to make them move in specific increments? There is not. I actually have mine turned off. You can turn that off. What screen set are we on? Yeah, so I have ignore mouse wheel on all faders turned on. But if I apply that, yeah, it kind of moves in a weird 3/4 dB increments. I don't really like that. I have a control surface, so I don't want mouse wheel to ever do that. Cairo or Kiro, you just got to get over it. You can't have even numbers. You can't mix a song with only even numbers in your volumes. You just have to not think about those things. Don't think about the numbers at all. Just move it until it sounds good. Who knows more about Reaper, you or Adam Steele? I think I know a lot more. But he has a different set of experience. He uses it for different things than I do. But I think I've talked to more users and been doing this for longer. But he knows a lot of stuff too. Nice try to start a feud, though. Jack Wise, how many years until people realize Reaper's superiority and it becomes the industry standard over Pro Tools? I mean, personally, I don't even care what DAW someone uses. I just want them to be happy. And if they're using Reaper and are stuck, then I try to help them. I was miserable using Pro Tools after like 6 years or something like that, maybe 5 years. I felt like I was forced into it and there's no other options. My phone's ringing. Yeah, I don't care what DAW you use. Reaper's best for me and a lot of other people. But obviously it's not the only option. Rothammer, have you ever been able to connect X32 or minus 32? I think there's a lot of people using X32s with Reaper. But I don't know. Like, I don't know if they're using it for a control surface or an interface or both. I think a lot of people are just mainly using the X32 as like a live console, and then they're just using Reaper as a tape recorder, as far as I know. But I've definitely seen Reaper users using those. I haven't used them myself. If it's as a control surface, I'm pretty sure you can. I guess you would put it in Mackie mode. I was helping someone this week with the Allen and Heath QU16, and that was a pretty simple setup to use. So that works as an interface and a control surface. Chris Norris says, I don't want Reaper or any DAW becoming an industry standard. I want the idea of industry standard to die. That's a good point. Well, on the topic of the fader decibel levels, maybe you want to actually, what is that? Turn off tooltips, and then you won't see the decibel levels. Where is that? That's tooltip. So just turn off tooltips for UI elements. And all right, I think that is good for today. So gonna end this stream here. Thank you so much for joining me. It's been a lot of fun, a bit stressful, but I think I've answered a few good questions in here. Let's see. So we've got a sale on for the Reaper courses, the video tools course, the Mixing and Reaper series. Use the code STAYHOME to get 50% off. And what else? The bundle of all three is already discounted to that same price. What else? We've got channel memberships on YouTube here. And so if you like the streams and you want like emojis and stuff, we can have special emojis for you. For now, I think that's the only kind of benefit I can offer. I don't know. The emojis don't even work. They're animated, but they don't animate, at least on desktop. Maybe they do on the other ones. What else was I going to say? What else is going on? Got a Patreon, and I don't know. That's it. I'm getting tired, and I've got a call to do in a little bit. So, yeah. Thanks for watching. I'll see you guys in the next video, probably Monday. All right. See you guys.